Welcome to Zealous Woman Podcast. I'm your host, Madeline Dawn, and this is part 1 of The Unnamed and the Renamed. A story about Noah's wife and his daughters-in-law, and Lot's wife and his daughters. So what can I say about these women? Not much, since we don't know much, but I can tell you what has been revealed to me while preparing for this podcast. So you've already heard who the women are: Noah's wife and his daughter-in-laws, however you say that, and then Lot's wife and his daughters. So these women have some things in common. They both stood at the opening of judgments. So Noah's wife with the destruction of everyone on earth, and Lot's wife with the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. So I'm just going to assume that Noah's wife and his daughters-in-law were slightly more obedient than Lot's wife and his daughters, since they're not really talked about, after the whole ark thing. But then we get to Lot's wife, and I'm not even going to get in today what his daughters did. You can go and read that for yourself. And, So, Lot's wife. It's really easy just to stand in judgment over her and think to yourself, oh, I would never be that disobedient. I would never look back. But I've had a major gut check while prepping for this podcast, because newsflash, we do that all the time. At least I do. I admit that I look back at my past and I either immediately shame myself, or I think that I miss that, and usually it's missing a person or even a feeling that you had. But I can just tell you right now that that's not good. It's not good to turn all the way around and try to cling on to what we used to have and what we used to love. The Gospel of Luke says in chapter 17, and Jesus himself is talking, and he's talking about the end times, and he's comparing them to the days of Sodom and Gomorrah. And he says in verse 32, remember what happened to Lot's wife. And then in 33, if you cling to your life, you will lose it. And if you let your life go, you will save it. We have to let go of the way our lives used to be, and the things that we thought that we loved, and the feelings that are only momentarily there. And it's a hard thing to do. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it's so easy to think that way. I still have problems with that. But let me tell you what I do know and what I tell myself when those moments come. There is nothing better than the love of the Father. There's no one that will ever be willing to give up for you what Jesus gave when he poured out his life on the cross. And there is nothing more comforting than the peace that the Holy Spirit gives. And I rest in that. And I find comfort in that when I'm tempted to look back. And I hope that you will too. I hope you enjoyed this somewhat small episode. There's not a lot to talk about since we don't know a lot, but make sure that you tune in, not next Thursday, but the next Thursday, as we move on in this little 3-part series of the Unnamed and the Renamed. And we talk about Abraham's wife, Sarah. You can check us out on Facebook.com/Zealous Woman Podcast for behind the scenes at what's coming up.